All right, so I've got my T-bowl here with a foot ring, and some of you might be wondering how you make the sides kind of flatten. So you want to try to get to it before your pocket's too leather hard, and you're literally just going to use your table. So you could use like an actual paddle if you had something that you wanted to hit with, but you can actually just drop it on the table. So I've just smacked that on the table, and you can see it's quite a bit changed the orientation. So I'm kind of aiming for like a three-sided thing here. So I've just pounded that into kind of three sides, and I can keep going on it. Now, if I try to do this too dry, it's going to make my piece fall apart. So I don't want that to happen. All right, so I've got my rounded foot still, and now I've got my triangular sides. And now I can move on to doing whatever surface decoration I'm interested in doing. In my case, I think I'm going to be doing some stuff with some slip, and I'll have to make sure I get a really nice quality of thick slip. So on to that. I have my T-bowl, and I'm ready to put some finishing touches on it. So I've got a bunch of tools handy. At this point, I have hit my piece against the table when it was leather hard to get this kind of triangular shape. The foot ring is attached and gives it a bit of visual lift off the table, but I haven't finished my lip on the top, and I haven't finished my surface. I've got some thick slip, which is very, very thick. I made slip and I let it sit out in the air for a couple days and kept mixing it around. So I've got that, I've got various tools. So to start with, I'm gonna finish my upper lip, which I'm gonna have be kind of making up and down movements. So what I'm gonna first do is just trace a line where I want it to be. If I had two and I wanted them to line up next to each other, I could place them next to each other, having traced a line, and make sure that they line up to where I want them to be. You want to do this when they're at the same level of moisture. You don't want to wait until one is totally dry and the other one's just soaking wet, because it won't work, because the one that's drier will have shrunk more. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut. And I'm going for an irregular movement. So I traced my little line, and I'm just cutting on through. Okay, so now here I've got my cut rim. I don't like the thickness that I have here. I want that to be a bit thinner, so I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to actually just slice inside. You can see the angle that I'm coming at. So I'm leaving a fair amount on the outside, but I'm just kind of giving the illusion of thinness, and it will make it appear more delicate. So I don't like that thick, chunky look. Okay, so I'm removing some of that, and it's come down, and it looks quite a bit more delicate now around the rim, quite a bit thinner. I'm gonna just come in and touch that up. And make sure that there are no spots where it's sharp. Your lips don't like touching sharp things, and this is a T-bowl. Okay, so this is what I've got now. And now I'm gonna get in there with a sponge and just smooth everything out. So I've got this little sponge, and I've put a little bit of water on it. And now I can really get into smoothing it and making it pleasant to touch to your lips. And I'm also smoothing out, especially on the inside, this transition. If there are any points on the inside where there is like a little dimple or a dent, or a indentation, that's going to be a spot where it's difficult to clean. And I would recommend that you smooth those out or fill them in by slipping and scoring and putting a little tiny bit of clay in there. So I'm really just going for it with my sponge now. I want that upper rim to be very pleasant to the lips. So I'm kind of taking this tool, I'm folding it over around and I'm pushing with two sides of my fingers and just like giving it a yank. You can see that this is already getting just quite a bit smoother. So that's very nice and rounded, very organic looking at this time. All right, I'm gonna go ahead, and I don't wanna put pressure on the top because I just cut it, but my foot also needs a bit of smoothing out. I left it somewhat rough, and I don't like it when my pots have anything on them that might cut me once they are fired. Okay, so I'm just coming in here and smoothing out this transition quite a bit. All right, and then I'm gonna pull out my banding wheel. And this is the part that it's really gonna come together. So I'm going to do some slip decoration on its surface. And this is something, I made a little dent. This is something where I'm gonna wanna center my piece, and I'm gonna take this thick slip and I'm going to decorate the surface with it. So I can take it on my fingers if I want and smear it like this to get a thick texture. Okay, and you see how that just like kind of gives it this sense that there's like a looseness or a painterly feel to it. Okay, you don't have to do it up and down. Right now, I'm just kind of spreading it on. I'm letting that just kind of get on there really thick. So now I've got this very texturized surface, and there are a bunch of options for what I can do now that it's coated in slip. I could come in with a rib tool and I could create, you know, a sense of direction and create ridges. Okay, and I think I really like that. So there's this sense of texture on it, kind of like tree bark. Okay, so that's one option that I could do. Another thing that I could do would be simply to comb fingers through it. And it would have the texture and the indentations from your fingers. Okay, so you could keep something like that, which I also like very much. You could come in with a sponge and create areas where it's very smooth to contrast with the areas where your slip comes in. And I'm running the sponge around the very underside edge so that there isn't anything sharp down there, because that is still a concern that there would be a sharp spot. So you can play with it. I'm gonna play with mine now and see what I come up with. So enjoy this time lapse.